attending one of the last sessions of the summit. Thank you for our participants, speaker of the day. Obviously, we would love to know more about you, so if you can start with the round of introduction. Mohammed, if we start with you.
Yeah, sure. So, hello? Can you hear me?
I don't think so.
No. Do you want to speak in mine? Do you want to speak in mine?
Hello? No? Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so, well, thank you very much for this welcoming. My name is Aloïs Saint-Loup. I'm the head of data for Edmond de Rothschild Private Equity. Edmond de Rothschild is a Swiss private bank, active in private banking and asset management. I come with a more, I would say, investment background, but always had a sweet spot for technology. And I joined the company to participate in a modernization of the infrastructure, and Gen AI definitely fits into that topic.
Thank you. Gary.
Hi, Gary Hoberman, CEO, founder for Uncork. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. So just a little bit of background. I started coding trading systems and private bank systems back 30 years ago on Wall Street. And I climbed that corporate ladder to managing director, and I eventually was managing $2 billion a year of technical budget and 10,000 engineers. And it was what I thought I dreamed of. And what I realized was every day I was working, I was making the company worse. So horrible feeling to say the thing you love most is technology, and every single thing I was doing was setting it up for disaster in the future. And the reality was 80% budget spent keeping lights on and 20% creating new legacy. That's the reality. So I left that world in 2017. I like to say jumped out of the C-suite and the corporate jet and created a startup called Uncork. Uncork is the first ever application cloud, which means we sit above the hyperscalers, and we basically own all of the software. We let you create, manage, and run your software in a secure, compliant environment. And we started with heavy regulated systems like banking and financial services, with customers like Goldman and JP Morgan, and insurance companies like Liberty and others that we had, and including government and healthcare with CVS. So simple goal, imagine a world where every application you build makes everyone else's applications more secure, scalable, reliable, and reduce costs. And just imagine that scale as everyone builds apps. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mohammed Abdelreze, I'm the group head of technology transformation and information at Mashreq Bank. Mashreq is a financial institution, a leading financial institution in the Middle East. We're part of Dubai Heritage in terms of being here for over 50 years and looking to be a permanent player in future of Dubai.
Mike Dempsey, I'm head of applied AI at BNY Mellon. What that entails is really identifying the problem sets that really matter for our clients and for the firm, and leaning into this capability to really, to tackle them. BNY Mellon, for those of you who may not be familiar, it's a bank for banks, as it's known. It's the largest custodian with nearly $50 trillion assets under custody. But it's more than that. So it's a large payment business, clearing more than $2 trillion, $2.5 trillion a day. So it's a large institution that everything that we do is at scale. But we also recognize this capability, emerging capability, is really transformational in everything that we do. So we're absolutely leaning in to make a difference in how we run our business and support our clients.
Thank you very much, everyone. So we have an actual representation of the financial industry and the software industry. So I'd like to know, starting with you, Mike, what are the approach or strategy that basically kickstart your journey in AI, and where do you stand today?
Sure. We're very much anchored on the problem statements, right? So actually, what are the objectives? What are the things that really matter for our clients and the firm that we need to solve? So we really always go back to that. I think that's important. Of course, what we can tackle with the capability evolves and that opportunity set expands. I think Gen AI is a good example of that. But really start out with a problem statement, have a clear idea in terms of how you're going to measure success, what is the criteria, what are the success factors going to be. A second part that we really recognized was, look, if you have hundreds of opportunities, and last fall, for instance, on the back of Gen AI, we really canvassed the entire firm, identifying what the opportunity sets were, and there were close to more than 600 problem sets that were identified. The last thing we want to do is build point solutions for each and every one of them, right? So it's really important that we bring in a platform approach and bring in a set of capabilities as opposed to a point solution to really help us actually tackle a family of similar problems and enable as much of the organization as possible. And when we're doing that, we really need to be very intentional in terms of what are we going to build, what are we good at, what is actually where we have a strategic advantage versus where our partners can help us, right? So really recognizing that and assembling the right capabilities to help us do that. And the third piece I would mention is deliberately we stood up actually a central team to help us execute that. It wasn't lost on us that we really need, for this thing to be successful, the entire firm need to actually embrace it and we need to enable the entire firm. But we needed to have that central team to lead the way, show what good is, what good looks like, and at the same time, put in the right, foundation in place that really lowers the barrier for the rest of the organization actually to take advantage of that as well. So those were some of the key decisions that we've taken, and we have a number of solutions in production now, and that pace is accelerating actually with that platform type of approach. Now, the time it takes us from an idea to a solution is getting shorter and shorter these days.
We'll have the pleasure to talk about some of the application that eventually went live. Gary, from a software development company point of view.
Yeah, so when you think about software, in the last 50 or 60 years, humans have invented 9,000 different programming languages to speak to a machine. The machine doesn't understand a single one of them. What we are now in AI is a similar spot. Imagine 9,000 languages being created in a week or two. All different languages, all different dialects, all have their own issues. And it's kind of the models that we see today. And where we see in Unquark in our strategy is being the glue that lets you in a regulated market create and use AI models in compliant with your laws and in your applications. But we recognize first and foremost, there's going to be leapfrog day after day from every single model out there. And the winner probably won't be selected until another 5 to 10 years. And at that time, it will look nothing like what we see today. So the one thing we realize is how fast this is going. It's a gold rush. There's tons of money being thrown at the problem, which means tons of new ideas will come forward, which is so exciting from a software engineering point of view. This is like a dream for many of us. But the one thing we do in strategically going through this is we can't choose a single model. We're on all three marketplaces today, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. We work with all three at their top tier. Each of them right now is leapfrogging each other, as well as you could throw in Anthropic and others and all the smaller companies coming. So to me, it's a very exciting place, like a gold rush, and we don't yet know what the answer is going to be. So allow the customers to pick and choose the models for each occasion that works best for them. That's been the strategy.
Thank you.
Yes, so in my perspective, so we sit at Edmond de Rothschild in an environment which is comprised of Swiss private banks. And I believe that a key characteristic that defines this industry is stability. Whenever some disruptive technology comes into play, I think it's part of our fiduciary duty to our clients to make sure that we know what's going on and that we don't miss an opportunity. So we took a deep look into that new topic, Gen AI, and figured, okay, if you miss the AI train today, there's a massive cost of opportunity because your competitors might very well build an ever-growing gap between you and them. And that's definitely not something that you want to see happen. So that's for the negative part. For the positive part, there's a whole bunch of applications, very specific, that we could profit from. So we decided to task a team for the AI subject, for the Gen AI more specifically. And right now in production, well, we kind of have all the basic elements that you might think of, whether, you know, a chatbot, you know, the assistant that will help you to draft your emails, file translation, file research, and even code assistant. But this is very vanilla. There's a whole bunch of very, very niche places where Gen AI applies very well, and I'm sure we will talk about those later.
For us, it's a bit different, and the journey started with digitization. And with the level of digitization, you cannot keep growing the bank in terms of headcount. And you have to get into automation, and that drives more, you know, the original use of machine learning and AI models in terms of servicing, in terms of the RPAs and the robotics. That's where it all started. And more recently, in terms of data and analytics and getting to know your customer a lot more, enriching that data, enabling the relationship managers to have more insights in terms of the opportunities for the client. So with Gen AI coming in, our first thought was to set up a center of excellence, a small center of excellence, just to set the governance, the policies, you know, the standards of adoption, so that you can control the models that are running. Because if you don't implement an MLOps, or if you don't have that standard, you can risk, you know, going places that you don't want to be in later. So a small center of excellence that sets it up, sets the standards, and then the business sort of takes that over. And then, like we did with digital and agile, we would have the business leading and technology supporting in terms of compute, having the language models available, enrichment of data, data quality, all of that kind of stuff fits together.
Thank you. So without going back too far, but I think starting in the 50s, really early days on the generative AI journey with knowledge-based and expert systems, and then moving to neural nets and really machine learning. Probably to 2017, Google research, attention is all you need, transformers, start the really acceleration of generative AI, and 2020, OpenAI launched ChatGPT, huge adoption. What do you see in your respective organization being, you know, one of the key use cases, application that is currently powered by generative AI?
Sure, happy to start. I think, and you know, when we're talking about, like, I mean, generative AI, the one common theme that I would describe in terms of the use cases today is more of a co-pilot construct. Even, you know, when we're thinking of AI, as I mentioned, like, I mean, it really is more of an expansive way of looking at it, including the classical AI, the predictive analytics, and the, you know, the anomaly detection and things of that nature. So we have, you know, an array of use cases in those areas as well, like from, for instance, you know, using enhanced forecasting to manage our liquidity, or to enable our clients, for instance, with, let's say, you know, trade settlement. We have, you know, given the volume of trades that we see, we can identify which trades are, you know, likely not going to settle on time, so we can provide that actionable insight for clients, you know, like, I mean, to do that. But those are more on the classical, you know, like, I mean, AI techniques. On the generative AI, as I mentioned, it's more on the co-pilot, but just to give you, you know, some examples. For instance, our client-facing staff, just one of our businesses alone deals with about 100,000 RFP questions a year. And these are questions that you would, you know, provide, like, I mean, detailed, thorough responses. But we have all the prior responses and the knowledge base. And so the hypothesis was, why don't we leverage this capability, its reasoning capability, so when a new question comes in, it can actually understand what it is looking for, and then go to your knowledge base, pull out the right ingredients in terms of that would actually be useful to provide that response, and use the large language model to pull that together and have a well-crafted response. Now you can make that available to the client-facing staff actually to edit it and send it out. So really, again, the expert is there, but really you can actually short the preparation time to get to that. And similar things, whether an analyst, for instance, in our investor relations team, who is responsible for actually looking at all the investment bank, let's say, analyst reports or earning days, earning reports, investor days. Again, you can have an agent that can actually interrogate, all those reports, distill it down in terms of, okay, so what are the salient points? What are the key things? Applying again the type of questions that investor relations analysts, would be using, and so they can actually have a good draft that they can work on as well. So you can, and you go through like a very similar type of things in various departments. Our legal team is using it for, doing some first review of contracts. So we're seeing real uses actually across an array of areas where you still need the expert, but you're really amplifying their productivity in terms of, how you can get them actually, high quality draft and how insights that they can actually, do the apply their last mile on.
Thank you. Gary?
Yes, I'll give you the examples in what I would think of like almost like horizons or a spectrum. So today, we're in production today with intelligent document processing, and our belief there is there are amazing tools that each do something very well using AI to extract data from documents, but there's not one tool that does it all. So we literally will pull up a document and say it's a tax form, let's go here. It's a legal contract, go here. If it's a loan document, go here. And we're seeing true value of that today in production, but that really is not as meaningful. That's replacing maybe an offshore BPO. That's the little bit more up the spectrum. One of the things that excites us most is we are successful today, as shocking as it might sound, in using generative AI and a partner called Rhino.ai, who we work with. And basically, the two companies between us could move your entire data center to the cloud and shut down every legacy application, from mainframe, COBOL, and assembler through Java and .NET. And basically, it's a world where we basically modernize and remove technical debt. And I don't know if you know, technical debt is estimated at $2.5 trillion of a year expense in operational issues. So that's gone in that world. And that's actually, we're doing this today with Fortune 100 companies and successfully. So a little bit more up the spectrum, completely agree with Mike. It's assistants, co-pilots, embedding within an onboarding, institutional onboarding app, a co-pilot to help you actually onboard the customer, tell you things to look at, the KYC, the OFAC rules and sanctions, easy. It's not productionized yet. I haven't yet seen an example but it's in progress. And then the final leap, I would say, is we're just at the brainstorming phase where I'm convinced it will actually replace humans in fields like underwriting and those decisions that they're making there. There's a company, a press release we'll launch tomorrow with a company called Elemental Cognition, working with us and Google, and it's the first time I actually think it's possible, and I didn't before. So to me, that's really where it comes down to.
Thank you. Alois?
Thank you. So I'm going to give you an example of the ongoing exploration that's going on in the company, and one example that hits pretty close to home for me. So I sit in a private equity team that invests in direct deals mostly. We have the full spectrum of clients. So with that in mind, it means that we have the full spectrum of investment objectives and investment constraints. We also need to keep in mind that the asset class of private equity is non-liquid. We cannot just reshuffle our portfolios every month to accommodate for this and that constraint. So we have to build the portfolio from the ground up and not mess up, because it's going to have lasting impacts for years. So how do we do this? How could we do this with Gen AI? Well, probably I can already tell you not how to do it. If you just take your client's input, throw it in a Gen AI model and hope for the best, that's a recipe for disaster, so don't do it. And it might come with another message, which is Gen AI is very good at text completion, not so good at producing mathematically correct statements. It might change in the future, but for now, it's not too good. Now, the good news is coding is very good at this. And coding and Gen AI go along together very, very well. So one thing that we are exploring is gathering the client's information, meaning investment constraints, investment objectives in natural language, have a Gen AI translate it in a language that the code can understand, and then have the code produce that mathematical result. So why is it so groundbreaking? Not so much groundbreaking, but why is it that it has such a big impact? Well, traditionally, we were trying to fit a client profile in a box that is our off-the-shelf offer. In that context, we no longer have to have an off-the-shelf offer. We can customize everything to the client for a marginal cost that is extremely low for us. And that's super important because it ensures that we can deliver to the end client exactly what this client is looking for. And that has a lot of value to us. I'm not even getting into the deal sourcing part and the reporting part because these are obvious to me, but what I described, the mixing of Gen AI and coding, it has a name, it's AI agents. So if I had to answer your question in a very short sentence, I think that the immediate set of opportunities for us is AI agents, definitely.
Mohammed, you are welcome to also share maybe one use case, but otherwise we would like to know within this journey and use cases, what are the main challenges that you at Mashreq was trying to solve?
Yeah, sure. So on the use case, very similar in terms of Copilot and document ingestion and analysis. We'd add fraud and prevention of fraud up to the point where even the suspicious transaction reports are automatically written and then just forwarded by an analyst, right? So you bring a 8 or 9 day affair into a few hours of work. So that's a lot of gain. And then on the client side, because we have retail, you want to get to the strongest virtual agent, or how do you detect sentiment, right? So someone just says card, and that card gets generated into, okay, do you want a new card, or do you want to change your limits? And then it becomes very conversational in changing that. Now on the challenges part, there's quite a few, but the most pertinent is data and data quality for the organization itself, because you can bring in models, but you have to augment those models with the right data quality in order to come up with the appropriate outcome. So having a data program or a data quality program is foundational at the start, at least for us. Regulations, I'm just going to give a few and just give a flavor of those things. Regulations, especially in the financial industry, is changing quite frequently. Some people are not yet on the change curve. You know, we're very progressive here. Some neighboring countries or other jurisdictions might be adverse. And if you're operating in those multiple jurisdictions, it becomes a very difficult thing, because you do one thing for one country and then you cannot replicate that service or have to go manual somewhere else, or it's like the cloud journey, for example. So regulation is still forming in some places. It's what do you adopt? Because policies are not yet published, right? So do you take, like in data, before the publishing in certain geographies, we did proxy to GDPR, for example. So what are we going to proxy when you don't have standards yet published at a country level, for example? Literacy of your organization. readiness in terms of understanding what AI is, or Gen AI, or machine learning, or deep learning, all those differences. So how do you put an education program to overcome the literacy issue all the way through to your developers, right? And co-pilot development as well. So yeah, those are, you know, main challenges that we have to overcome in order to progress fast, right?
So literacy, regulation, and data.
Those three, there's much more, but I'll pass on to others.
Maybe our colleagues and friends will build on that. Mike, if you want to start.
Yeah, and no, happy to build on what Mohammed talked about. I think maybe one another aspect that comes to mind is how rapidly this space is changing. Gary talked about in terms of the models. So there's a great deal of interest that I spoke with earlier about the number of use cases. All those are in production. But how do you design these solutions in a way that allows you, that actually gives you the flexibility that tomorrow if another model actually can is better, or the infrastructure is better, you have that optionality. We all know the major cloud providers and the capabilities that would come with them, but how do you plan for for instance vendor lock-in in a space that that's really early days, right? So how do you prepare for that? So for instance, we do have a hybrid strategy for that. We have both on-prem and the cloud options today. So we're investing in both. It's the education part really that Mohammed talked about, I really underscore. On one hand, we are very keen to actually, best way to learn is we really want to get these capabilities in the hands of as many users across the company as possible. And people are using it in their personal lives anyway, using ChatGPT, but giving them more secure options of these capabilities that actually allows them to be productive, where they work. But at the same time, how do you ensure that everyone understands the limitations of this, right? Like there can be a lot of excitement, but when to trust it, when not to, and how do you build, that discipline? So we're very intentional about, rolling out courses and really making sure actually people take these required trainings, to address that, education aspect as well. And it's again from going back to the early days aspect of it. How do you build towards something? For instance, if you're fine-tuning a model, but a month later something is going to come out, and all that start the time that you invested in that is waste, because that's the new model can actually address that. So how do you anticipate what's going to be there in a few months as well and build towards it, as opposed to what's available today? So these are some of the challenges that we're dealing with as well.
So I see more eventually in deployment ops related to the
design flexibility, even though the tied to the early days of the nature and the education aspects.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything challenged so far. They're here. You have to address those. The one I'll give you additional is what we would say is called traceability and lineage. It's a very boring concept, but to explain this for anyone who's an engineer, you'll know what I mean, and if not, I'll do my best. But if you were going to ask me to code a screen with 3 pieces of information the consumer enters, and I'm going to take those 3 pieces of information and pass it to a model and get back a result and store the answer from the model, what's going to happen, and this is the way it works, is you have HTML and JavaScript and Java and database, and you're going to basically say, oh, I want to collect 4 pieces of information. And you add a screen and you add a field, and then you want to collect 5. And then let's swap out the model. And let's call 2 models, and let's get it back. And the challenge is in a regulated market, demonstrating to regulators like a time machine what happened in the past. So you passed that data and you got back an underwriting decision on a credit card. You approved it, you rejected it. How do you know the code wasn't tampered with? How do you know the code didn't switch approved to rejected in a bias? And these are the situations we live with today in pre-Unquark software. So we solve that with data lineage, traceability, time capsule. We see our role in AI is making the only variable to the regulator be the model. So you could replay the entire transaction in our system, proving nothing was tampered with, proving what it looked like, the 3 fields versus 4 versus 5 in different times. But then that leaves the model. And the models that are continuously learning and updating themselves. And what does that mean? So you'll find the term explainable AI is going to be the answer to all of this. And the company I mentioned, Elemental Cognition, the reason why I'm excited is they give us not just back approved, but they give us back in an English document every single thing. If you ask the human, how did they come up with approved? I looked at this document, I found this here, this was actually here. I made a call out to OFAC, this person is not a terrorist, let's go back here. And it actually walks it down like you'd ask a human. And we store not just their answer, but we store the explanation with the record. So suddenly you could actually go to a regulator and say, we're in compliance. And we're in compliance as much as we want to change the model, we're always in compliance. That's the challenge and hopefully the solution.
Well, I think I would join my co-panelists in most of those topics. I mean, data-wise, clearly there's a stronger will to use the data than to clean it beforehand. I would add to this that there might be an issue with data bias and an ethical issue linked to it, as well as data ownership when data is so central to training the models. Obviously, the regulatory issue is a big one. It seems like the technology is evolving at a faster pace than the regulator can cope with. And finally, I'd mention probably change management strategies and the fact that you see kind of a bipolar type of population, people who are completely opposed to change and people who are over-enthusiastic with generative AI and want it everywhere. Earlier, you were mentioning that Gen AI started half a century ago. There were rule-based methods, and those models still have their place today in some fields. So there's probably not a need to have an ubiquitous, sorry, it's difficult to pronounce for me, Gen AI in everything that we do. But I think that there needs to be a middle ground where Gen AI actually adds a lot of value, and hopefully we'll find some leader somewhere who figures out the way to impose a change management culture in his organization.
So obviously, Mohammed, you are heading probably a big team, and you mentioned education. How do you see the talent and building capabilities moving forward at Mashreq? What's your optic on that?
Yeah, so let's start at the top, right? So sponsorship first, right? Because that comes from our board and from the CEO, down to the point where on everybody's MBOs, even if you're the head of compliance, legal, HR, finance, any of the functions or the business, you have to have a strategy on AI and Gen AI specifically. So you start at the top, and that enforces our output of the Center of Excellence in terms of the educational program. So we've split the educational program across the bank. So sort of board and exec, business user, operations user, and developer. So that it covers the spectrum in terms of how do you introduce it and how do you maintain it. Now the other thing is you have to be nimble and choose your partners carefully as well, right? Because there's a huge war for talent. You're not going to keep that IP internal to the bank for long, especially if you train them well. They'll get other opportunities elsewhere, right? So you have to diversify. We run our tech shops out of Egypt, Pakistan, and India, for example, because being in one geography, you do suffer if there's turnover in that geography or something like that. So you have to diversify your talent. Choose your partners. I mean, we're in the middle of FinTech Summit, so there's a lot of agile players and fintechs out there that have really good product. if you partner with the right fintech, it's a bonus for us and them. But like my colleague said, you have to do that with that fiduciary responsibility and not experiment on the edge. You have to, do small things on the edge, and then the core comes later. So you gain trust in those solutions, and then you bring them closer to home. So multi-sourcing of talent in different geographies is one. Sponsorship from the top, education throughout the organization, get our developers certified in terms of development with Copilot, and using our partners, the Microsofts of the world. They have these training programs, and we leverage those relationships as well with the big partners.
We are heading toward the end of this panel. Maybe in one sentence, if you have to foresee what will be the future of generative AI in your respective industry, what's come to your mind?
I think it's going to be ubiquitous in practically everything that we do. So I think it's really, really important that we embrace a learning mindset, keep an open mind, and really just see how we can lean into this capability responsibly, because right now we may not really be thinking of all the possibilities, but and which is you can go back to the early days of the internet, and people tend to see it as incremental thinking, but the possibilities are really actually hugely transformational. So I think it's going to be ubiquitous. We just need to be prepared for it.
Thank you. Gary?
I would say the word I'd use is unknown, and we have to be excited about it. And I think historically humans are resistant to change. Anyone doing large digital programs in banks, and I've lived through those many times, people grab on and know what they know, and that's their life. They're hooked on that. Like humans have to develop a mindset like a termite mindset, which is eat your home and move on to the next home. And part of that will be the success of AI as we embrace it. So I'm excited for that journey. Hopefully hopefully we all won't be in that movie WALL-E with these big shakes and smoothies drinking out as we go. But maybe that is a good thing. Who knows?
And Luis?
I'd like to join you on unknown, but exciting. What a time to be alive. There's going to be so much customization that we're going to be able to do. It's hard to picture everything that's going to be in the realm of possibilities, but I just can't wait to be there.
Ahmed?
Being led by client centricity, I think we will follow what the client expectations are in terms of developing and moving with the times. So it is very exciting, but it's very fast moving, and we got to keep up with both, keeping up the landscape and at the same time introducing the new technologies and getting the business to own that transformation end to end.
Thank you very much, all of you, for this very impressive panel, and please, for the audience, join me in the round of ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.